Welcome back to Faith Focus Network, where we talk everything Catholic. And my name is Daniela Bizant. Today we're talking about the nuance, the difference between divine intervention and divine providence. So divine intervention, something happens, you need a thing, you bring it to God, God answers your prayers, and everybody's happy. Some theologians actually call that a spiritual cookie, not to diminish the beauty of that moment when it happens, but because sometimes the Holy Spirit will use those moments to blow your mind a little bit in the event that you were feeling a little bit unsure. Because when you're early in your conversion, you might have spiritual doubts. You really hope this God exists and you really hope someone's hearing your prayers, but maybe the synchronicities that have been happening have been so nuanced or so that you're not sure whether these are a coincidence or actually God answering your prayers. So every once in a while, something will happen that'll completely blow your mind so that there's no way you can doubt. You are not alone in this world, and God is interceding for you. So as long as you are under his cover and you are living a life pleasing to him, you're taken care of and you're okay. And sometimes your mind needs to be blown for you to be that convinced, and God is happy to do that many times. I had a situation early in my conversion where, again, I wanted it to be true. I was having all these experiences and whatever. God, you say that I could bring you all of my things, even my material needs, but I just don't know for sure. Like, are you really listening, or am I just delusional and trying to fill a void? And in my situation, I hit a financial struggle. And I needed $10,000 by the end of the week. Like, where are you going to get $10,000? I wouldn't even know who to ask to lend me that kind of money. Like, I don't travel those circles. So I was like, what do I do? And I gave it to God. And I'm not supposed to go to God with material things or ask for riches, right? That I'm supposed to go to make me a better person. But I was desperate and I brought it to God. And within an hour or two, I got a random ask for a project that fell on my lap, and it was a rush job, and they were willing to pay me $10,000 if I could do it by the end of the week. Like, I almost dropped my phone. That I was silent for the first minute because I couldn't believe that this just happened. And within hours, God found me $10,000. He made me earn it. That was a tough gig, but I was able to do it. I was perfect for the job. And so it was the perfect thing landed on my lap, and bang, $10,000 by the end of the week. So that blew my mind. That's divine intervention. Divine providence is something different. Divine providence is the feeling you get where the Holy Spirit knew something was about to happen and had the solution in place before you even saw the problem. So for example, you randomly meet someone that happens to be a roofer, and you come home that day and you have a roof leak. So you didn't even know you were going to need a roofer, but God did and made sure that you had his phone number before the problem happened. That's divine providence. And when that happens, it's almost eerie in a way, in a good way, but it is a little bit eerie. It's one thing to ask for a miracle and get one. It's another thing to realize how much God can move in your life and what he could surround you with so that you can, I was about to say, so you can deal with the complexities or the resistance or the difficulty that for whatever reason you're fated to face. But now I'm not talking out loud that maybe God created even the difficulty in a way. Who knows? We're never going to get to that answer today. But divine providence, when that kind of starts to show up in your life, has you really thinking about reality and fate and predestination and determination, and then makes you then think about free will a little bit differently, because, it almost feels like a play that was set up and all the characters were there to create the situation. That's what it feels like when it's divine providence. I'll give you an example of a few examples of how I've been seeing divine providence in my own life. So I'm not someone that makes friends often. I'm pretty much a loner. So, and I'm pretty discerning. You can go back on videos talking about friendships and how I'm discerning of how I spend my social time and with who. And it's not often that I've been in a position in life, sometimes, but not often, where I'm asking God for friends. Rarely do I ever do that. It even prompted me to make a video in the past about that, because it doesn't occur to me to do it ever. So, and I wasn't in the time, and I ended up meeting a couple that I fell in love with instantly. And these are people I would love to be friends with, and they weren't even Catholic yet, okay, at the time. And we met in a very secular setting. And the friendship began to bloom in a secular sort of way, but it quickly turned religious because it happened that they were being baptized as Catholics. And they were just on their journey for that to happen. So great, that new friends I meet happen to also be Catholic. Fantastic. Didn't think much more of it than that. And then I ended up in a religious setting where I faced roadblocks and energy that maybe wasn't the best. And, it was overwhelming. And I thought to myself, I'm not going to be able to do this alone. Like, I need somebody that has a similar vision. I need, I need friends, allies, that I could take this on with. Well, that same couple, don't they end up joining my church? So it was like, wow. And I had just made friends with them before I realized, where the shark tank I was in. So God was already bringing me the friends that I was going to need, because, I remember having a moment where I asked the Holy Spirit, was sitting in my church, and I asked the Holy Spirit, please bring me some like-minded individuals so that I'm not doing this alone. Well, I had made friends with them weeks ago. God was already on it. Before I even knew I needed the problem, He already brought them to me. And now some beautiful things are emerging. Another situation happened where I was, I've been trying to get to the heart of someone who is agnostic, and I'm trying to get them off the fence. But it's hard because this person is in science, and he's in a very niche, obscure housing of science. So he's in this little niche element. And, I've been trying to crack this nut, and it has not been very easy. And one day we got into a heated spiritual discussion / argument, because it was pretty much getting to an argument level. And he said to me, you know what? I'm a lover of science. I'm a lover of science, and evolution is proven. And I said, you are, a 50 whatever year old man. The science you think you know that you learned in high school is now outdated. Science is catching up to God. When was the last time you read a science book? Or are you still going by what you were taught in high school? And he had to admit that he had not been keeping up outside of the molecular thing that this guy studies. And he said to me, well, you know what the problem is? I don't want to learn about religious from someone who's not science-based, because I'm a science-based thinker. So unless, and there's no scientist on the planet that believes in what you're talking about. I'm saying, yes, there are. I'm telling you. He goes, well, I tell you what, you find me a scientist that believes in God and can prove God to me, and I'm happy to have a conversation. Well, turns out that if you can look him up, Dr. James Tour. Dr. James Tour is a professor from Rice University that does amazing biblical lectures. I knew he was a scientist. I didn't know what kind of scientist he was, because I only listened to his Bible stuff. And I've been listening to his stuff for a year. For a year, I've been listening to him on repeat. Like, I love his work. Well, something happened on my YouTube algorithm that all of a sudden I saw a Dr. Tour video that was not Bible-based, but was one of his science lectures. And it happens that it's the exact niche, obscure science thing that this guy is into. Not only that, Dr. Tour is one of the world-renowned leaders in this field. So he's not just interested in the same niche, obscure science thing that this guy is, but he's like the grand poobah of researchers in that field. That would be like on the rock and roll level of, bringing Sting to the dinner table, or Paul McCartney, right? So he's the Paul McCartney of this niche science thing. So I was able to reach out to him because not only is Dr. Tour a world-renowned famous scientist and biblical lecturer and Christian, but he's so dedicated to the Christian aspect of his life, he's got a challenge that he's willing to talk to anybody about the resurrection, anybody. So I reached out to him, said, listen, I can't reach this guy. He's a scientist. He's in your field of science. He doesn't believe there's scientists that believe in Jesus. Here you are. I've been listening to you for a year, not knowing, I thought I found you just to learn more about the Bible. I didn't realize that you were in my consciousness because I was going to need you to save somebody with me. So anyway, I reached out, and he was so generous. And he said to me, look, I'm not going to call this guy and say, hey, you don't know me. I'm Dr. Rice, and let me tell you about Jesus. That's not how I work. But if he's willing to have a conversation with me, I'm willing to take it there. And if you have to use our mutual science as the means for that conversation, I'll oblige that too. So I set up a professional introduction completely on the science angle. So it was a very secular email. And Dr. Rice came back. Dr. Tour came back and said to the guy, listen, yes, I'm happy to talk to you about science, but if you also want to talk about Jesus and the resurrection, I'll be happy to have that conversation too. So he gifted the guy a 1 hour or 45-minute conversation about science, because that's the only way I was going to get this guy in the door was on the science angle. Hey, here's the Paul McCartney of science, right? You want to talk to him? You're not going to say no to that. Dr. Tour, man, he's a big deal. So sure. So he sat down for 45 minutes, and at the end of the conversation, and he even said to me after, the guy said to me, I felt like he was just indulging me with the science talk, but he wanted to get to the Jesus, right? But hey, he did. And he said, listen, can we have another conversation? As a scientist, I want to tell you why I believe in the resurrection and Jesus Christ. And that guy obliged. And they read scripture together. He stayed on the phone for an hour explaining how science and God and the resurrection are completely compatible. And it was just brilliant. And now this guy, not that he walked out converted, but he's way more open-minded now that he's someone like Dr. Tour. If Dr. Tour can believe in Jesus, then maybe I should not dismiss it, So he's being a bit more open-minded, which really now I can do my work, right? He cracked the nut. Now I just got to peel off a bit of the layers. So it was massive. Dr. Tour has been in my consciousness for a year, not knowing that one day he would be instrumental in the saving. And if this person gets saved, that impacts my life because it's somebody very close to me. So it will have a direct impact on my life. He was there the whole time for a whole year, just waiting for me to send that email. And I didn't know. I didn't know I was going to need him that way. I just thought I randomly found a great Bible lecturer. Like there's a lot of great Bible lecturers, and he was just another one of the 20 that I like to listen to. So nope, that he would actually become instrumental. God put him there a year before I was going to need him. So, that's how divine providence works in your life. And when you are able to open yourself up to the service of God and therefore tap into that, because what do you need providence for if you're not doing God's work, right? So that's when things get truly magical. At work, in my professional life, I was offered an opportunity that could have been very lucrative in an area of my career that I had been cultivating for a really long time. So I was waiting for this big break, and I finally got it. In order to do it, I would have to betray a friend. He was a client, but we had become friends. And I'd have to betray him in order to do that, and I just didn't want to. And, sometimes you think you want something your whole life, and then you get there, and it's not what you thought it was going to be, So I was feeling pretty disillusioned anyway. So this was just the icing on the cake to convince me that this cesspool is not where I want to hang out. But it's really hard when you're 50 to now suddenly reinvent yourself, yet again, you know what I mean, and take on a whole other direction and pivot. And I wasn't sure. And also, I kind of felt like all these years I've been building towards this moment, and now I'm going to walk away, and all that time is a waste. Like, well, so what, for nothing? Like, so all of this was, so again, I gave it to God. I gave it to God and said, like, I don't know, like, what am I supposed to do? And to give up the money, like, I'm scrambling here now financially where I'm begging you for $10,000 miracles. You know what I mean? Like, I need something ongoing that will somehow restore this. Like, I did the right thing by turning down the gig, but now I'm being sacrificed, right? And I've lost money because, when you get punished and you get canceled, I wasn't canceled, publicly canceled, but I didn't agree to do the thing. So now I'm persona non grata with the people that decide who gets to do what and who makes what. So my integrity, literally destroyed my career. Now what do I do? And what do I do with everything I learned? Just throw it in the garbage, God? Like, please, like what, So this position has come available that I swear to you, when I read the job description, like if someone said to me, Daniela, what would be your dream job? Like if you got a career, whatever, right now, and you could just create it for yourself, what would it look like? That was it. And again, unlikely that I would get it, but I got it. So now it makes me wonder, was I always going to be at this job? Or did God create this job as a reward because I turned down the opportunity to betray a friend and I did the right thing and I was willing to pay the financial price? And man, God let me suffer for a while, eh? It's not like I gave up the gig and gave up that money and then the next day there was a miracle. Not like that $10,000 miracle I got, which was actually in the middle of all of that. But I actually had to struggle, and pay the consequence financially of my integrity. And God let me sweat for a while, and it was scary. It was scary. And I hadn't been in that kind of financial dire straits for a very long time. It felt very foreign, and it kind of felt like it was out of the blue. And it was painful. But now on the other side of all of that, when they say, God restores, He restores completely. So this new dream position I'm facing more than replaces what I lost. I get to do something I love that isn't just high integrity, but the impact it could have on communities is massive. Like massive potential for impact. That is something that I never had in that other career. It was flashy and glamorous and whatever, but I wasn't doing anything good. I wasn't doing anything that, wow, I made the world a better place today. I didn't feel like that. And this new role feels like that. That only God provides that feeling, So it was like, look, God knew I would need to learn certain things. And I did in that other role. And it also, I got to learn what happens when people that aren't fueled by love or not, under God's cover, the lack of potential, even if you get money, even if you get the glamour, what it feels like to be spiritually mundane in your role, to not be making a difference, how that sucks you dry over time. And how as soon as I put myself in God's cover, even the parts that were hard, the time that I had to sweat through it, nothing horrible happened. It felt horrible, like, the limbo, the not knowing, the whatever, that felt was torture, but nothing actually bad happened. God covered me. I survived through it, and now I'm on the other side of it, and it's golden and beautiful, and the potential really fuels me and inspires me. And I realized that everything I needed was always there. God moved me to the place where that role would be available. The skill sets are completely transferable, and it just, the people that I needed to meet to put me in the position, and even that, because I volunteered my time for 3 terms before, a role that was paid would come available for me in this area I loved. So for 3 terms, I did it as a volunteer just because I love my community and I want to help it. And I never for a moment thought, gee, I wish I could monetize this. Never. I have a skill set, my community needs it, and I'm going to give it. And never once did I say, God, can you turn this into a job? But he did. He actually found a way to turn my volunteer work into a career. Like only God can do that. And there's a part of me now that wonders, was God doing it all along? So maybe this isn't just God reacting to a decision I made here and there. It was like, no. Or maybe it is. Who knows? Maybe it is. Maybe God said, well, look, you know what? She's been volunteering here for 3 years. She's been giving it her all. Let's reward her a little bit. Let's find a way that she can amplify what she's doing. And, make it a way that now is monetized so she doesn't have to think about money, which means she doesn't have to take on jobs she doesn't want or gigs that don't make her feel good or have to do things that are untoward. No, I found a way that she can pay her bills and now she can devote 100% of her time to doing this thing that's going to help the community. But he made me earn it. In every single area that Providence has shown up in my life, a major sacrifice had to happen just before. And not minutes before. Like, you make a sacrifice, like you turn down a gig because of integrity or something, and you pay the consequence for that, and that's painful. Boy, that's painful. God was in hell for 3 days. He was with the dead right before he resurrected. He didn't die and resurrect in 5 minutes. He was there for 3 days, so you got to pay the consequence for those good decisions, and those integrity decisions hurt, and those consequences are painful. But man, on the other side of that, what happens is 1,000 times better than the pain that got you there. And now that those problems have been solved for me and I'm on the other side of the calamity and the stress is all gone, it's like childbirth. It's the worst pain you're ever going to feel. But once that baby's in your arms, you don't begrudge the pain so much. And, within a year, you're ready to go through it all over again, right? For women that are having more than one kid. So even though it was the worst pain you ever had, the blessing that came from that pain is so great, you can't wait to do it all over again. And you try, right? Women try to get pregnant again and again and again and again, despite how hard it is on your body. Well, the spiritual battle is sort of the same. So the moment sucks, and the consequences of that moment suck, but the other end of that is amazing. When you let God in the mess, and you let God guide you through the mess, how God is able to pick up those pieces and put them back together into a mosaic in your life that is phenomenal. The right people showing up before you need them, not when you need them. They're already there. The solutions are already there before you even know there was a problem. When you're in God's cover, you go beyond just getting spiritual cookies. It's beyond just getting the occasional miracle. It's about God moving through every aspect of your life, every decision that you make. And this is where free will comes in, because I could have betrayed my friend and just made money that way, right? And then none of this other stuff would have happened. I could have not volunteered, and therefore I wouldn't have known that I was so good at this one thing that then inspired, this other thing to happen that enables me to do this now full time. So this never would have happened if I wasn't willing to put in the time to volunteer for 3 years. For then this opportunity to be available. So it was a result of my free will, in the sense that if I didn't choose to volunteer or I didn't choose to do the right thing, the moment for these things to be happening for me wouldn't even be here, because I'd be on a different plane of existence in both situations. But because I did do the right thing twice, Providence was able to work through me. And I love the way my friend Joseph explains being under God's cover. That's how he puts it. That when you're in a state of grace and you're living your life as God, demands, and you're doing everything right, that you're under God's cover. When you're not sinning, you're under God's cover. Your experience of the world is very, very different when God's providence is in play and is open to you, right? When you use your free will to include God in all of your things. If I had not asked God for my 10,000, would it have showed up that day? If I didn't ask God, to speak through my conscience, I've been working my whole life for this career opportunity. Should I just betray my friend and take it? He'll understand. He knows the industry. He gets that this is the game. He'll get it, right? I could have made that decision, but I didn't. I could have decided I'm not going to volunteer for 3 years. Nobody's paying me. I got things to do. I got to worry about myself. But I didn't. I worried about my community. And because I was worried about my community, God was taking care of myself in ways that I didn't even see coming. So when I'm just looking at all this, suddenly it makes even your difficulties different. Like, for example, right now I'm facing a bit of an obstacle somewhere. And I told you that God brought me these beautiful friends that they're in it with me, right? And sure, we could hate that this is happening. It would be so easy for us to sit there. Not that we haven't had moments where we'll sit there and say, can you believe this is happening? This is horrible. This is, we feel like we're battling evil, and it's, frustrating and demoralizing. And we'll have, those moments where you feel like you're kicked in the gut. But I realized today, I realized this last night after watching the movie Cabrini, that we're just living our own version of that story. We're living the glam version because what Cabrini went through, wow, right? What we're going through is pales in comparison to what she did. And what we're trying to build, is so small compared to the global thing that she tried to do, which is actually quite empowering. Because now I know we can do this. If she can do that, we can do this. No problem, right? But it would be great if we could just get to the happy ending part. But then that takes the story away, and it takes God's providence out of the equation, and it takes, the journey out of it. So when I'm looking now at my friend and what we're trying to accomplish, I'm already seeing providence happening. We were on the phone today talking about, actually yesterday we said, we need more allies. And as we're building this thing that we're doing, we're sure God's going to teach us like who the enemies are and who the allies are. And today we were on the phone, talking about this situation, and we got interrupted by a phone call. And who was it? An ally we didn't know existed, right? Came into the conversation. So it's like, if we weren't facing what we're facing right now, we would have no story that we're creating, because right now what we're facing doesn't feel so great. But 2 years from now, when we've overcome all this and everything has come to fruition and everything, and God has restored all the things and put all the pieces back together, that's going to be a movie-worthy story. I would be depriving us of the opportunity of having that journey and that story to tell if God would say, well, how about we skip all the difficulty and I just put you to the happy ending? Well, that's not what life is about. That's no fun, right? When you do those mud runs, you do it because, those marathons where you run in the mud and by the time you're done, you're absolutely filthy, right? That's the whole point. You don't think I'm going to do a mud run and just make sure I come out clean at the other end of my marathon. No, right? Marathon runners, they run till their nipples bleed, so they want that pain, that struggle, because something comes from that. And in our case, especially when you're talking about religious stuff, that's sanctification happening. Cabrini went through a lot of stuff. That stuff made her a saint, right? So it's like, well, this is our sanctification. So now all of a sudden, when I look at our obstacles this way, every person that's standing between me and that happy ending isn't an enemy anymore. They're not someone trying to destroy me. They're sanctifying me. They're going to make me a saint, and that could not happen if they didn't exist. Every hero needs a villain. How am I ever going to be a hero if no villains make themselves apparent to me? Right? So all of a sudden, I need that villain in order to get my happy ending. I need them. And can you imagine if I can turn those villains into allies? Because now it's not me anymore. Because Providence is at work. Providence brought me friends that I would need for this moment. Providence brought me allies. And I haven't even seen all the allies yet. Today we just got our first one. And it's like Providence is working here. And we need the obstacles in order for Providence to have something to wow us with. And suddenly I start looking at the negatives and the obstacles as such brilliant, beautiful gifts, because my happy ending could not happen without them. And every time they make a move, every time they, insult, or I'm faced with a small vision or limited thinking or whatever, I am given a moment of sanctification in that second. Which is so funny, because up until recently, these people, I've been trying to love them unconditionally, but that's hard, or getting angry or frustrated, where now it's like I want to kiss their feet every time, they're nasty, because you're getting me one step closer. And again, that's the beauty of Providence and the unshakable confidence and strength you get when you feel it working through you and around you. I'm not guessing anything. I'm not wondering what the ending's going to be. I'm not discouraged and should I be giving up here? Nothing like that. Nothing. Not for a second do I ask why or how. I just do. And that's, to quote Cabrini, one of her famous lines that she repeats over and over in the film is, right, start the mission and the means will become available. She said that over and over. Start the mission, the means will become available. And I'm really, really taking that to heart as I walk through the next phase of both my career and my personal spiritual goals. And that's a really solid place to be. And that is what Providence makes you feel.